All right, so tonight we're diving into this movie, Saturday Night 2024. And basically, it's all about the lead up to the very first Saturday Night Live broadcast. But here's the thing, the whole movie, the entire thing, is just those 90 minutes before they go live.
It's a really interesting concept, isn't it? To take that short window of time and make that the whole film, really capturing the pressure and the chaos of a live TV debut. It's not just about being historically accurate. I think it's a really deliberate choice to put you right there in the moment with them.
Yeah, and the reviewer definitely picked up on that. They actually called the pacing intentionally chaotic, which honestly just makes me want to see it more now. Overall, they gave it like a pretty good rating, saying they love the unique concept that the fast pace might leave you, I don't know, wanting a little bit more from the characters.
Yeah, I can see that. It's really tough with that style of storytelling where everything's happening so fast. It reminds me of those like really intense, real-time movies like United 93 or Dunkirk. You
Yeah.
get that like immediacy, that feeling of everything unfolding right there with you.
Mm.
But then often you lose some of the character development because of it.
Right, you're so caught up in what's happening that there's no time to really dig into the backstories of the people.
Exactly. It's a trade-off for sure. And it seems like in this case, the director, much like those other films, decided to focus on capturing that like raw energy and tension of the moment.
And speaking of energy, this reviewer called out the storytelling as a really strong point, and I thought that was interesting. They were really into how the movie's runtime, like the actual length of the film, mirrors those 90 minutes. They said the director uses that like ticking clock, that very real possibility of a live TV disaster to create this constant tension.
Well, absolutely. It makes you wonder too, with all that chaos, how much of it really happened the way they show it?
Well, that's what I was going to say. The reviewer actually pointed out some moments that they thought were probably like fabricated or at least rearranged for the movie.
Yeah, it's always that tricky balance filmmakers have to find, especially with historical stuff. How much is sticking to the facts and how much is taking some creative liberties to make a better story?
Right. Like, how much does a little creative change impact your enjoyment? Is it a bad thing, or can it actually make a story better?
That's the question,
Yeah.
right? It's really up to the individual viewer, I think. Some people want everything to be 100% accurate, and others are a little more flexible if it means a more compelling narrative.
Yeah, for sure. Well, I'm getting more and more curious about this movie the more we talk about it. And, speaking of details, we have to talk about the cast because there are some big names in this one. What stood out to you?
Oh, for sure. Casting can make or break a movie, right?
Yeah,
Especially when you're dealing with a historical drama like this, because you're not just casting a character, you're casting a real person.
totally. And the reviewer had some thoughts about that. For example, they thought Gabriel LaBelle, who plays Lorne Michaels, did a pretty good job, but maybe seemed a little young for the role. Like, apparently, Michaels was 31 when SNL premiered, and LaBelle is only 22.
Wow. Yeah, that is a pretty big difference.
Mm.
Makes you wonder if a younger actor can really capture the essence of someone like Lorne Michaels, especially in a film where so much rides on the intensity of those 90 minutes? I mean, sometimes you need that extra life experience to really nail a performance like that.
It does make you wonder how that extra decade would affect things, right? But then again, younger actors bring a certain energy too, and the reviewer did say LaBelle gave a solid performance.
Definitely. It's a tough call for casting directors for sure. Speaking
Yeah.
of casting, I think the reviewer had some opinions on some of the other actors too, right?
Oh, yeah, for sure. They absolutely loved Andrew Bartheldman playing, well, essentially himself, like he's leaning into that same kind of comedic persona he had in No Hard Feelings.
Ugh, the old typecasting trick. It's interesting how often that comes up in these kinds of movies.
Yeah.
On the one hand, it can be kind of limiting for an actor to get stuck playing the same type of role over and over, but if it's done well, it can be really effective too. I mean, think about it when you're trying to capture the feel of a specific time period. Having actors who already embody that kind of energy can really add a layer of authenticity.
It's true. It's like tapping into something familiar for the audience, something that just clicks with their perception of that time.
Exactly. And then sometimes, well, you just need a little Willem Dafoe being Willem Dafoe,
Yeah.
you know?
Okay. Yes. Always a good call. But, let's shift gears for a second and think about the people listening who maybe aren't SNL fanatics like us. What's the takeaway for them? Why should they care about this movie beyond all the behind the scenes stuff?
That's a really good point. I think at its core, this film really speaks to those universal themes we all connect with. Ambition, creative passion, that pressure to perform when the stakes are high, that whole, we're in this together, let's make it work. energy is something everyone can relate to, even if they've never stepped foot in a TV studio.
That's a good point. Plus, you've got that added layer of history, that glimpse into another time, kind of like we were saying earlier about United 93. You don't have to be a history buff to get sucked into those kinds of stories.
Absolutely. And on that note, the reviewer mentioned that knowing how successful SNL becomes actually affected how they watch the movie. What do you think about that?
Oh, yeah. It's like when you already know the ending of a story, it changes how you experience all the twists and turns, right? I wonder if, in this case, knowing it all works out in the end makes the movie less suspenseful. Or maybe it adds a whole other layer, like you're watching these comedy legends when they were just starting out. What do you think? It's like, those stories you hear about a band playing in some tiny dive bar right before they make it big? Suddenly, that show means so much more when you know they became superstars, you know?
Totally. It completely changes how you see it. It's not just ambition anymore. It's like this story of, wow, they actually pulled this off against all odds. And that can be really powerful, even when you know how it ends.
Yeah, for sure. And this reviewer even pointed out how the filmmakers really tried to capture that whole 70s vibe, not just with the way it looks, but even with the dialogue and stuff. Like, they said even the jokes feel very 70s SNL.
It's funny how humor changes over time, isn't it? What might have had people dying, laughing back then might totally fall flat today. But when a movie really gets those details right, it's like being transported back in time.
Yeah.
It becomes more than just a story. It's like a little time capsule.
Right. You get a glimpse into that whole cultural moment, which actually, this makes me think back to what we were saying about the pacing of the movie. Even though the reviewer wasn't crazy about it for character development, they did say all that frantic energy really worked to build the tension, especially as you get closer to the end.
It makes sense when you think about it. I mean, we all know how the story of SNL turns out, right?
Yeah.
But there's still that inherent drama of that first night. Are they going to be able to pull it off? Will the audience like it? Those are questions that can still hold your attention, even when you kind of know the answer.
Yeah, totally. It's like when you watch a movie about, I don't know, the moon landing or something. You already know they make it, but you're still on the edge of your seat the whole time. But speaking of endings, this is one place where the reviewer wasn't totally sold. They said it felt kind of forced and predictable, which I don't know.
Yeah, it's a tough thing to get right. How do you keep the audience guessing when they already know the ending? Everyone watching this movie knows that Saturday Night Live becomes this huge cultural institution. So the filmmakers have to find some other way to keep things interesting, keep the audience emotionally invested, even when they know what's going to happen.
That's a good point. Well, I think it's safe to say, even if you're not obsessed with Saturday Night Live like we are, Saturday Night 2024 sounds like it's worth checking out. It's a behind the scenes look at something iconic, a story about taking a chance on a crazy idea, all set against the backdrop of this really specific moment in time.
And hey, you never know. It might even inspire you to go back and watch some old SNL sketches, see how the humor has changed, maybe discover some hidden gems.
Exactly. So, as always, we'll leave you with this. Do you think knowing the ultimate success of Saturday Night Live makes a movie like this better or worse? Does it cheapen the struggles they went through, or does it make it that much more amazing that they were able to pull it off? Let us know what you think. Until next time, keep exploring, keep learning, and we'll catch you on the next deep dive.